This video is a high-level overview of the different channel modes on the SSL console. I'm going to show the most common uses here at ACC for the different modes, and attempt to help straighten out terminology which can appear a little loose at times in the SSL documentation. Every channel on the SSL can be assigned its own mode. There are three possible modes. In addition, every channel on the SSL, all 24 of them, has two signal paths. How these paths work depends on the mode that you've assigned to that channel. You can see what's happening on each path at the meter at the top of the channel. These paths tend to get called different names based on which mode you're in. This chart shows the names of the different paths you might see or hear. I'll go into a little more detail in this video on this and a lot more detail in other videos dedicated to each mode. Let's start with inline tracking mode. Inline tracking mode is what you should be using for recording. It is similar to the signal path of the Neotech used in Audio Engineering 1. This mode uses both paths for one mono signal. When you are recording and have an input signal, it flows down this first path called the record or input path. Then it flows out to Pro Tools. The second path is called the monitor or return path. Again, this is a mono signal that is using two paths. You can see what's happening in the 2 meters at the top arranged left and right. But that isn't representative of what you should be hearing on the left and right speakers, respectively. You're only hearing a mono signal on both speakers based on what you see on this right meter. The left meter is just showing you your input signal. In inline tracking mode, your Pro Tools input will be odd numbered and your output will be even numbered. So if you're using input 3, then your output for that track will be 4. If you are finished recording and you're just mixing now, you can leave your channels in inline tracking mode and leave your Pro Tools inputs and outputs alone. Next, let's go into inline mixing mode. This mode is intended for mixing only, and I'm going to keep this description short. This mode gives you the option of an additional send or an additional track from your DAW. I recommend only using this mode once you're comfortable with the modes and the SSL signal flow, and you need more than 24 channels to mix on the SSL, as you can certainly mix in tracking and stereo modes. In general, you'll send a mono output from Pro Tools to an odd number when you're in mixing mode. And again, I'm really simplifying this one. The stereo mode is the mode where the left and right visual for the primary and secondary paths makes more sense because you hear what's on the left primary path on the left monitor speaker and the right secondary path in the right monitor speaker. When you're starting out, you'll want to use stereo mode only for playing back already recorded content from Pro Tools. In stereo mode, you will send the output of the stereo track to an odd even pair, like 1, 2, or 3, 4. To summarize, I've shown you our common channel modes and how we use them at ACC, just the basics. However, the console is much more flexible and powerful than that, and you can do almost anything in any mode. You can record and mix or stereo mode. You can mix mode for a stereo track from your DAW. This is why the SSL manual can be so confusing. It's offering you all the possibilities. And I want to add one last note. You'll see in the SSL manual something called a focus mode, and that is different from the channel modes. The channel modes are channel specific, and there are these 3 types that I've gone over. The focus modes are either analog focus or DAW focus, and they apply to the console as a whole. In DAW focus mode, you can control your DAW with the console. Be aware that when you're in DAW focus mode, your signal flow and meters will change. Until you've learned how DAW focus mode works, be sure to have the blue button on the console lit up, signifying you are in analog focus mode. There are several ways to tell what the channel's mode is in currently. The first way is on this channel 1, you can see that inline is red and stereo is not lit up. So it's not in stereo, and the inline is red instead of green, so it's not in inline mixing mode, it's in inline tracking mode. Let's see, I can select this channel and come down here, and we can see these buttons lit up, and you can see track is lit, so that tells us we are in tracking mode. If nothing was lit, we would be in mix mode. And if we were in mix mode, you can see over here that inline that was red before is now green. I'm going to come back down here, go back to tracking mode that we usually use here. A third way you can see the channels mode is by coming to the SSL menu, going to the Chan menu, make sure that's lit, yellow, this third one from the right, and up here in the top, inline track. So if I turn that off, that turns to, let's see the glare, inline mix. And if I go to stereo, then you see stereo. And I'm going to leave it on stereo for a second and show you what that looks like over here. When stereo is on, you can see that button lit up, and now the inline button isn't lit at all, red or green. All of the SSL's channels each have their own mode that you set, and you have to set a mode. There are 3 possibilities: inline mix, inline track, or stereo. And over here, these 2 buttons are where you set that, tracking, stereo, and if neither of these buttons is lit, then it's mix. So let's do some examples here. I'm going to go ahead and select channel 24. You can see it's in tracking mode. I'm going to change that to stereo mode. Now you can see the stereo button is lit here for being in stereo mode. I'm going to go ahead and unselect that. If you want, you can change the mode for every single channel at once by pressing all. So let's go ahead and turn them all to mix. Turn that off now. When it's on, they're all lit. When it's off, they're not lit. The select buttons are not lit. So by changing them all to mix, I went ahead and reset this one back to mix mode. You can see the inline green is lit up. So it was stereo, but when I changed every single one to mix, it changed this one with it. We can also change a subset. So if we want, we can hold, let's say, these 2 buttons down at the same time, and now it's lighting up just these 2 with everything in between, and then we can go and change those. So let's change those 4 to track. So you can see how everything else is showing mix, but for these 4, we're showing track. They're still lit up. Go ahead and turn those off.